Emily Carter, a single mother, lives in a cramped Brooklyn apartment with her 6-year-old daughter, Lily. The walls are thin. The heater rattles in the winter. And every corner of their small space tells a story of sacrifice. Emily's days start before dawn and end long after sunset as she juggles 2 jobs, one at a bakery and another at a bustling diner. Each shift leaves her feet aching and her mind racing with worries about rent, groceries, and Lily's future. On a cold Wednesday evening, Emily rushes home from the diner. Her apron still dusted with flour and grease stains. Lily is curled up on their worn-out couch, clutching her stuffed bunny, Rosie. Her forehead is warm, her cheeks flushed, a fever. Emily's heart sinks. She grabs her coat, tucks Lily into a blanket, and heads out into the night to buy fever medicine. The pharmacy is just a few blocks away, but parking is impossible. Emily drives in circles until she spots an empty space right in front of the pharmacy but marked with a wheelchair sign. With no time to think, she parks, dashes inside, and buys the medicine. 5 minutes. That's all it took. But when she returns to her car, a bright yellow parking ticket flutters under the windshield wiper. $200. Back at home, Lily's fever subsides, but Emily's dread grows. The ticket sits on the kitchen counter, a cruel reminder of how quickly things can spiral. $200 might not seem like much to some people, but to Emily, it's a month of groceries, part of the rent, or winter boots for Lily. The following week, Emily receives a court summons in the mail. Her stomach knots as she reads the location, the Brooklyn courthouse. Her case is assigned to Judge Robert Hayes, a name she's heard whispered in worried tones at the diner. He's strict, unyielding, and has earned the nickname the Unforgiving Judge. The day of the hearing arrives. Emily wakes up early, dresses Lily in her warmest coat, and double-checks her paperwork. On the subway ride to the courthouse, Lily clutches Rosie tightly, her wide eyes taking in the towering buildings outside the window. They arrive at the courthouse, an imposing gray structure with heavy wooden doors and stern-faced guards. Emily holds Lily's hand as they step inside, their footsteps echoing on the cold marble floor. The waiting room buzzes with hushed conversations and nervous glances. Emily tries to steady her breath, clutching Lily's hand a little tighter. Around them, lawyers shuffle papers. Defendants stare at the floor, and the large courtroom doors loom like gates to an uncertain fate. In that moment, Emily feels the weight of it all pressing down on her, the long hours at work, the unpaid bills, the fear of failing Lily. But she straightens her shoulders and whispers to her daughter, "It's going to be okay." Lily looks up and smiles faintly, Rosie pressed against her chest. Together, they wait for their turn to face Judge Hayes. Emily's heart pounds as they step into the courtroom. The wooden benches are filled with people, lawyers, defendants, spectators, all waiting for their turn before Judge Robert Hayes. The judge himself sits high on the bench, his presence commanding and stern. His sharp eyes scan the room, missing nothing. Emily takes a deep breath and approaches the defendant's table with Lily by her side. The courtroom feels colder than the waiting room, and the echo of every movement seems amplified. Emily's palms are damp as she holds onto the papers containing her explanation and her plea. As they wait for their case to be called, Emily overhears snippets of conversation from two attorneys nearby. They speak in hushed tones, but the words still carry across the silent room. "You know, Judge Hayes hasn't been the same since his wife passed," one lawyer mutters. "Yeah," the other agrees. "She was in a wheelchair for years. He's always been strict. But now, it's like he's guarding something deeper." Emily's stomach tightens. The pieces click into place, his rigid demeanor, his reputation for being unforgiving, it all makes sense now. Grief has a way of hardening people. And for Judge Hayes, it seems to have turned into an unyielding commitment to the rules. When their case is finally called, Emily stands and leads Lily to the front of the courtroom. Judge Hayes adjusts his glasses and stares down at them from his elevated seat. "State your name," he says firmly. "Emily Carter." "Your Honor," she replies, her voice trembling slightly. "And this is your daughter?" "Yes, sir. This is Lily." Judge Hayes nods and begins flipping through the papers in front of him. The silence stretches on as he reads, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, he looks back up. "Ms. Carter, do you understand the violation you've been charged with?" Emily swallows hard and nods. "Yes, Your Honor. I parked in a designated wheelchair spot. But it wasn't out of disregard for the law. My daughter was sick, and I had to get her medicine quickly. I wasn't thinking about anything else at that moment." The judge raises an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. His eyes briefly flicker to Lily, who's clutching Rosie and looking around the courtroom curiously. "Do you have anything else to say in your defense?" he asks, his voice cold and sharp. Emily hesitates, her throat tightening with emotion. Before she can respond, Lily tugs gently on her sleeve and looks up at the judge with wide, innocent eyes. "Can we get pancakes, please?" Lily asks softly. The question hangs in the air, a single moment of pure innocence cutting through the heavy tension. For a split second, Judge Hayes' stern expression falters, and a faint smile tugs at the corner of his mouth. A ripple of soft laughter passes through the courtroom. Even the sternest faces seem to relax slightly. Judge Hayes leans back in his chair, studying Lily carefully. "Pancakes. Huh," he says quietly. For the first time since stepping into the courtroom, Emily feels like the ice might just be starting to crack. The silence in the courtroom stretches as Judge Hayes looks between Emily and Lily. The weight of his gaze is heavy, but something in his expression has softened. Lily, still clutching Rosie tightly, meets his eyes without fear. "Tell me, Lily," Judge Hayes says, his voice quieter now. "Do you like pancakes a lot?" Lily nods eagerly. "Yes, sir. Mommy makes them sometimes when we have a good day." Emily's face flushes slightly, and she nods along, her voice trembling as she adds, "When I can, Your Honor. On Sundays. Usually." The judge exhales slowly, removing his glasses and rubbing his temples briefly. When he puts them back on, his voice is firm again. "Ms. Carter, raising a child is not easy, and the law does not make exceptions for emotions. But, sometimes, compassion can find a place in these proceedings." Emily's breath catches in her throat as Judge Hayes begins to speak again. "The circumstances surrounding your violation are clear." Judge Hayes continues. "You parked in a space reserved for those with disabilities. That is not something to be taken lightly. But I also see a mother who is trying to care for her sick child. In a moment of urgency." The courtroom remains utterly still as Judge Hayes pauses, his eyes flickering once more to Lily, who is now resting her head against Emily's side. "Your clean record and the context of this situation compel me to consider the humanity behind the infraction," Judge Hayes says carefully. "The ticket will be dismissed." A gasp ripples through the courtroom. Emily's knees nearly buckle as relief washes over her. Her hand clutches Lily's small shoulder, and tears pool in her eyes. But Judge Hayes isn't finished. He clears his throat, looking down at Emily again. "Additionally, Ms. Carter, I am providing you with a list of resources that may assist you in your situation. Childcare programs, employment training, and access to online education platforms are all available to you. Use them well. Emily chokes back a sob. Thank you. Your Honor. Thank you so much. Judge Hayes gives a small nod before turning his attention to the bailiff. Next case. As Emily and Lily turn to leave the courtroom, the weight on Emily's shoulders feels just a little bit lighter. Lily looks up at her mother with a bright smile and whispers, "Can we get pancakes now?" Emily laughs softly, her tears finally spilling over. As they step out into the bright hallway, a new sense of hope glowing between them. Emily and Lily stepped out of the courtroom, the echo of the judge's final words still ringing in Emily's ears. The heavy weight she'd been carrying for weeks felt noticeably lighter. Lily skipped alongside her mother, clutching her stuffed bunny Rosie tightly against her chest. "Mommy, can we get pancakes now?" Lily asked, her voice filled with innocent excitement. Emily let out a soft laugh, wiping away the lingering tears on her cheeks. "Yes, sweetheart. We can definitely get pancakes." As they walked down the marble hallway of the courthouse, Emily replayed the moments in the courtroom over and over in her mind. Judge Hayes had been stern, almost unyielding, but something had cracked through his tough exterior. It wasn't just Lily's innocent question about pancakes, it was something deeper. Something Emily couldn't quite put into words. Outside the courthouse, the chill of the winter air bit at Emily's face. She wrapped her coat tightly around herself and Lily before spotting a small diner across the street. Its neon sign buzzed faintly, promising warmth and comfort. Inside, the diner smelled of syrup, fresh coffee, and sizzling bacon. The atmosphere was cozy, with red leather booths and foggy windows. Emily guided Lily to a booth near the window and helped her out of her coat. Rosie the bunny was placed carefully beside her. When the waitress arrived, Emily ordered a short stack of pancakes for Lily and a coffee for herself. As they waited, Emily found herself staring out the window, her mind drifting back to Judge Hayes. His eyes had softened when he looked at Lily. The list of resources he'd handed her: childcare programs, job training, online education, felt like a lifeline. It wasn't just about dismissing the ticket, it was about giving them a real chance at a better future. "Mommy, look!" Lily's voice pulled Emily from her thoughts. The waitress had arrived with a plate piled high with golden pancakes. A dollop of butter melted slowly on top, and syrup pooled around the edges. Lily's face lit up as she clapped her hands together. "It's perfect." Emily smiled, watching her daughter dig into her meal with pure joy. For the first time in weeks, Emily allowed herself to breathe deeply. In that moment, she realized how much she'd been holding onto: the stress, the fear, the guilt. Across the diner, a small television mounted on the wall flickered with the local news. Emily barely paid attention until she caught a glimpse of Judge Hayes' face on the screen. The reporter was recounting a story about a mother and daughter in his courtroom earlier that day. The headline read, "The Unforgiving Judge Shows Compassion in Rare Ruling." Emily's chest tightened as she listened. The news anchor spoke about Judge Hayes' reputation, his personal loss, and how something in today's case had struck a chord with him. Lily, oblivious to the broadcast, was focused entirely on her pancakes. "Mommy, pancakes make everything better," she said with a satisfied grin. Emily reached across the table and brushed a strand of hair from Lily's face. "You're right, sweetheart. Sometimes, they really do." The weight of their struggles wasn't gone. But in that little booth, with the scent of syrup in the air and Lily's joyful smile shining bright, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Judge Robert Hayes sat alone in his chambers. The heavy wooden door closed behind him. The faint hum of the courtroom lingered in his ears as he removed his glasses and rubbed his tired eyes. The image of Emily Carter and her daughter Lily remained etched in his mind. And the stuffed bunny, Rosie, clutched tightly in Lily's small hands, kept resurfacing in his thoughts. His late wife, Margaret, had owned a similar bunny, a cherished keepsake she kept close during her final days. The courtroom was no place for sentimentality. Yet today, those memories had crept in uninvited. Robert leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. His reputation as the unforgiving judge was not unfounded. He had always believed in the strict adherence to the law, seeing it as a pillar of order in a chaotic world. But today, something had shifted. Emily Carter's trembling voice, her tired eyes, and her daughter's innocent plea for pancakes had cracked something deep within him. It wasn't just about the ticket. It was about the weight Emily carried, the impossible burden of single motherhood, of struggling to keep her child fed and healthy while balancing jobs that barely paid enough to survive. He reached into the drawer of his desk and pulled out an old photograph. Margaret smiled back at him, her face framed by soft curls. She was seated in her wheelchair, the same bunny resting on her lap. Robert felt a familiar ache in his chest. "What would you have done, Maggie?" he whispered to the empty room. The silence answered him. 4 years. Robert had hidden behind the armor of the law, using its rigid boundaries as a shield against his own grief. But today, Lily's innocent question and Emily's quiet resilience had broken through. He sighed deeply, setting the photograph back in the drawer and straightening his posture. There was a fine line between justice and mercy. And today, he had dared to step across it. Tomorrow, the courtroom would be filled again with more faces, more stories, and more decisions to make. But for now, Judge Robert Hayes allowed himself a brief moment of vulnerability. In the stillness of his chambers, he realized that compassion didn't weaken the law, it strengthened it. Emily Carter sat at her small kitchen table, a stack of papers spread out before her. The list Judge Hayes had given her was neatly printed, each resource carefully outlined: childcare assistance programs, job training courses, and information about an online degree program. The judge's decision to dismiss her parking ticket had been a blessing. But this list, this was a lifeline. Lily sat across from her mother, drawing a picture of pancakes and her stuffed bunny, Rosie, with bright crayons. The late afternoon sun filtered through the apartment window, casting a warm glow over the modest room. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt something she could only describe as hope. Taking a deep breath, Emily picked up her phone and began dialing numbers from the list. The first call connected her to a childcare assistance program. After answering a series of questions, Emily discovered she was eligible for subsidized childcare that would significantly reduce her monthly expenses. Her second call was to a local job training center. A friendly voice explained that there were evening classes available for administrative certification, which could open doors to better-paying jobs. Emily scribbled down notes, her heart racing with nervous excitement. As the calls continued, Emily felt the weight of her struggles slowly lifting. Each opportunity presented a step forward, a chance to build a better life for herself and Lily. It wasn't a magical solution, but it was a start, and that was enough. "Mommy, are we gonna be okay now?" Lily asked softly, looking up from her drawing. Emily set down her phone and reached across the table, gently brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be okay." That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Emily sat by the window with a cup of tea. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and for once, They didn't feel cold or distant. Judge Hayes had given her more than a dismissal of a fine, he had given her the tools to change her life. Emily made a silent promise to herself and to Lily, she would use every resource on that list. She would fight for a better future. One small step at a time. Outside, the hum of the city carried on. But inside Emily's tiny apartment, there was a quiet sense of renewal, a glimmer of possibility that hadn't been there before. News of Judge Robert Hayes' decision spread quickly beyond the walls of the Brooklyn courthouse. Local news outlets picked up the story, highlighting the rare moment when the so-called unforgiving judge had shown compassion. Headlines spoke of a struggling single mother, a brave little girl, and an unexpected act of kindness that left an entire courtroom in quiet awe. Emily Carter couldn't escape the ripple effects of that day. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers reached out to her with messages of support. Some offered small gestures, a bag of groceries left at her door. A handwritten note of encouragement slipped into her mailbox. For someone who had grown used to facing her struggles alone, the sudden wave of kindness felt almost overwhelming. At the bakery where Emily worked, her manager pulled her aside one morning. "Emily," he said with a warm smile, "I saw your story on the news. You're one of the hardest workers here. And I want you to know, we've decided to give you more flexible hours so you can attend those evening classes." Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she nodded her gratitude. Every step forward felt surreal. Like a door she had long thought closed was now slowly creaking open. Meanwhile, Judge Hayes' story was met with mixed reactions in legal circles. Some praised his decision, calling it a necessary reminder of the balance between justice and mercy. Others criticized him for what they viewed as a lapse in judicial firmness. But Hayes, ever stoic, paid little attention to the chatter. The image of Lily clutching her stuffed bunny and asking for pancakes stayed with him far more than any headline. Back in their small Brooklyn apartment, Emily diligently worked through the list of resources Judge Hayes had given her. She enrolled in the online degree program, and Lily started attending an affordable childcare center nearby. Their lives weren't instantly perfect, bills still piled up, and exhaustion still crept into Emily's bones after long shifts. But the difference now was hope. The smallest spark of kindness had ignited a chain reaction, one that continued to grow with every step Emily took forward. Months had passed since that day in the Brooklyn courthouse, and Emily Carter's life had started to take on a different rhythm. The weight of uncertainty still lingered, but it no longer crushed her spirit. She had enrolled in the online degree program Judge Hayes had recommended. And though juggling classes, work, and parenting was exhausting, it felt purposeful. Lily was thriving in her new childcare program. She made friends, painted colorful pictures, and came home every day with stories that made Emily laugh. The little girl still clutched her stuffed bunny, Rosie, everywhere she went. A comforting reminder of the day everything began to change. Emily's job at the bakery had become more manageable thanks to her flexible hours. Her manager had even hinted at a potential promotion once she completed her certification. For the first time in years, Emily felt like she wasn't just surviving, she was building something. One chilly Saturday morning, Emily decided it was time for a small celebration. The sun peeked through the gray clouds as she and Lily walked hand in hand to their favorite diner, the same one they had visited after their court hearing. The bell above the door jingled as they entered, and a wave of warmth and the familiar scent of syrup and fresh coffee wrapped around them. They settled into a booth by the window, Lily placing Rosie carefully beside her. When the waitress approached, Lily beamed up at her. "2 pancakes. Please," she announced confidently. Emily laughed, shaking her head. "Make that 2 pancake platters and a coffee for me." As they waited for their food, Emily stared out the window, her thoughts drifting to Judge Hayes. She wondered if he ever thought about them, about the day he'd chosen compassion over rigidity. She hoped he knew the ripple effect his kindness had created. The pancakes arrived. Golden and steaming, with butter melting into the syrupy pools on top. Lily clapped her hands together in excitement, her smile wide and pure. "Mommy," Lily said through a mouthful of pancake. "Do you think Judge Hayes likes pancakes too?" Emily chuckled softly. "Maybe he does. Sweetheart. Maybe he does." They ate slowly, savoring each bite. The world outside the window bustled on. Cars honking and people hurrying down the sidewalks. But in that little booth, time felt still. Emily watched her daughter with a quiet sense of gratitude and awe. When they finished their meal, Emily paid the bill and guided Lily back out into the crisp morning air. The city stretched out before them, alive with endless possibilities. Lily squeezed Emily's hand as they walked. "Mommy, pancakes really do make people happy, don't they?" Emily smiled down at her daughter, her heart full. "Yes, Lily, they really do. Sometimes, it's the smallest moments, an innocent question, a stuffed bunny, a plate of pancakes, that remind us of the extraordinary power of kindness and how it can transform lives in the most unexpected ways."
What do you think about the judge's decision? Was it right to dismiss the fine and help a struggling mother? And if you were in the judge's shoes, what would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.